Right, welcome to the meeting. I'm Councillor Paul Hopton and I'm chairing today's committee. Within the meeting today, we also have members of the committee, officers and members of the public. Please ensure mobile phones are switched to silent to avoid any disruption during the meeting, and also whilst you're not speaking, can you put yourself on mute if you've not already done so. Fire procedure. If the fire alarm sounds, attendees will be directed to where to go. Please follow the instructions given to officers. Stephen. Okay, so item 1 on the agenda, declarations of pecuniary, non-pecuniary and prejudicial interests. Members to declare any interest in items on the agenda and nature of such interest. I'll kick off with my own declaration. My wife is a member of the East Riding Pension Fund. Councillor Whittle.
Thank you, Chairman. Both my wife and I are members of the fund and both beneficiaries, I'm delighted to say.
Okay, item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the committee held on the 17th of September 2025. Many thanks to Councillor Holtby for chairing that. Apologies I couldn't attend. Has anyone got any comments to make on the minutes, or can I sign those as a correct record? All right, need a propose a second? Yeah? Yeah? We're good? Yeah, fine. Okay, item 3 on the agenda. Delighted to have Linda Bowen with us in person today, which is always a pleasure, Linda. And you're going to give us an overview of pension board activity on item pages 7 to 14 on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just to say that I've got a few items that I want to update you about. Strangely, it's not item pages 7 to 14 on the agenda so much, because I think we talked about this at the last pension committee meeting. But also to report on that I've sent and received a letter from Darren Stevens in respect of the team's recruitment and retention issues. And also to a trip I had to London last week to the first ever SAB assembly. SAB is the Scheme Advisory Board, which is the main interface between pension funds, excuse me, pension funds and the ministerial government, ministerial pension government. Oh, for goodness sake, I'm getting my words. The government in respect of pensions. So it's the advisory board that does the negotiation with the government, discusses and feeds back to the local funds. And so just to go through what you've got on your notes first, 7 to 14, I think we talked fully about what happened at our last pension board. I don't propose to further mention any other items other than to highlight the recurrent themes, these being national changes coming to the team, the pensions team administration and workload challenges, which arise from increased workload and the current establishment of the team to meet the demands upon it. If you remember, the board and committee were concerned at the volume of work facing the team. And at the last meeting, the committee agreed proposals that will help the team to get back on track in meeting its statutory requirements due to the creation of a new structure and an overall enhancement of the workforce. This is now in process, and I believe later on in the meeting, you will be getting an update from the pensions manager on how that is progressing. And you'll also remember that staffing and workload is the highest of the risks on the risk register for the fund. So the letter that I have sent and received from the corporate director. There is a copy available at both of my letter that went from the board and also the response, should any members wish to see it. But suffice to say, the corporate director is aware of the problems facing and has acknowledged its important issue, and is committed, following the implementation of the restructuring, to look again to see if there are further issues for his attention or that need to be reviewed. So that was a positive thing. Then finally on to the Scheme Advisory Board Assembly. Now this was an invited audience of chairs of pension boards and pension committees, and was both well attended and an excellent networking opportunity. It was a little bit strange really, because we didn't get an agenda until we actually arrived at the event. So it felt a little bit like we were being summoned, but without a reason. Teresa Clay from the MCHLG spoke, and I mean, I think her words were followed by a number of sector experts who wanted to focus very much on the governance challenges that lie ahead for pensions funds. And very much a focus of the event was the in-depth inspections that are going to be coming our way. These are going to be the equivalent of Ofsted, but for pension funds. So think detailed, think responsibilities when it comes to this. The Scheme Advisory Board are very heavily into promoting peer support. And for my sins, I have volunteered to be one of their auditors, peer to peer. I think it can only do us good, because there's so much that's going on in other local authorities, so much going on in other funds, that I think, you know, if we go out and we do peer support work, then I'm hoping to bring ideas back as much as I am to take ideas out. So that's something that I think we're going to be hearing more of. The Scheme Advisory Board are going to continue the chair's meetings, and I do commend it to chair of this committee as a really good networking event, and something that's going to give us a lot of information. That's really all I've got to say, because our next board meeting is early next month. So for now, no, December, sorry, we're not in November yet. It just feels like it with all this Christmas stuff. So I think that's where we are really with the pension board. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Linda. Has anyone got any specific questions for Linda at this point? No. Well, if I just on that, I'd appreciate the correspondence that you had with Darren Stevens, and obviously, yeah, just the reply back, and as you know, Julian, Tom, Liz, you know, very well aware, and you know, it's something that's been discussed a lot, and yeah, recruitment and retention of staff in such a specialist area, which is sort of away from, shall we say, some of the main you know, functions of the council is particularly tricky, and you know, this market at the moment, isn't it? So yeah, there's a lot of work going on in the background around that. But you know, if anyone's got any questions about that at any point, then please do reach out to Liz or to Julian, and they'll be able to give you further details. Okay, so right, without further ado, then thank you for that, Linda, and I'll move on to item 4. And Tom, welcome back. Nice to see you back and looking well. And yeah, I'll over to you, sir.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So this is a report on the pension funds annual report for 24-25. So the annual report itself was sent out a couple of days later than the main report. It's an extremely lengthy report, but it's been written to comply with CIPFA's Code of Practice. So if you want anyone to blame for how much information is in there to digest, it's them. Around about the second half of the report is actually a number of policy documents that have previously been approved by the committee. I've nothing much to say really other than that. I think the accounts page is, I suppose, where the most important bits are, which are from page 89. And that shows that the value of assets have gone up by around about 200 million in the year, which is a reasonable improvement. And you can think about that in the context of the valuation paper that is later on the agenda, and also where we've got to since then on the quarterly review. So we're around about 400 to 500 million up from the year end position. So given the outlook at the year end and all of the unusual things that have been happening in the markets, that's a good position to be in. At the time that I wrote the covering report, it was, I suppose, unclear about whether the audit process would be finished by the end of November or not. It's now clear that that's not going to happen. So we are asking the committee to approve this draft report, which will be published on the website before the deadline of the 1st of December. Now, the audit process for the pension fund is essentially complete. So we're not expecting there to be any changes to the accounts at all. But of course, the auditors will sign off the audit certificate, including a review of what's happened up to that point in time. So we can't be 100% sure about that. But if there are any material changes that are to be made to the accounts and the report, we will of course bring those back to the committee. So at this stage, we're just asking the committee to approve the draft so that it can be published by the deadline. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. In view of what Tom said there, any questions, or are we all okay with that? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods there. So it's recommended that the committee approves the draft annual report on accounts. Do you need a second? Yeah.
Someone's the majority.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Right, without further ado, on to item 5, pension fund trust treasury management activity. I'm coming back to you, Tom.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So this is a report that we bring to the committee every 6 months just to update you on what we've been doing with the fund's cash. This report confirms that all of the activities has been in compliance with the treasury management policy, which is a policy shared between the council and the pension fund, except on 3 occasions. Now, these 3 occasions are for because of the timing of cash that goes in and out of the fund. And as you will have seen from previous reports, similar breaches have occurred in the past. And these arise because when money is transferred between banks, we don't have any control over the timing of that. So sometimes what happens, particularly if overseas banks are involved, particularly in the US, we might receive money too late in the day for us to deploy it anywhere else, and that tips us over the limit. So these are, I would suggest to the committee to view these as, they are breaches of the policy, but they are not of concern. So I'm happy to take any questions, but that's all I have to say really, Chair.
That's fine. That just seems to me like technical breaches, shall we say? As you said, there's things you can be in control of and things you can't be. But yeah, Councillor Healy.
Item 1.3, it says beaches, not breaches. In the final sentence at 1.3. Just
Depends if you're off on your holidays or not. Yeah, so
which is this?
yeah, without a doubt.
Perhaps I was thinking about holidays at the time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we are.
Yes,
We all were there, but yeah, we'll certainly. We need to amend that. No, we're fine. But thank you. Very good. Well, very observant.
Actually, drawn
Councillor Meredith, he's coming in with something similar, I'm sure, on it.
First off, I would just say it's hard to look at eye-watering figures like this and not think of buying a tropical island. So if it was a Freudian slip, you have my utmost sympathy and understanding. So good spot, Councillor. I must admit I had missed that one. My question though was on page 819 of the report. There's the 3 incidents described. The third one, it says that funds were recalled to cover 14.5 million month-end payments. Just for my own peace of mind, really, that was a predetermined recall of funds that was intended. It wasn't a, oh, hang on, we've got these obligations that we can't meet, and so actually we need to recall funds. And that combined with the maturing index meant that it went over. It was, as the chair's already said, a technical issue, and this recalling was pre-planned and not done on either a whimsy or as a reaction.
Yes, that's correct. And just to say, of course, these breaches were corrected the following day in each case as well.
Thank you. And also thank you for a report that nearly made it under 100 pages. I was just getting settled in and I finished.
Very good. Right. Okay. From me there. Recommend the committee notes report. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, on to item 6, which is the local government pension fund regulation and governance update, where we have Liz, who thankfully made it safely into the car park today.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so this is a regular report that we bring to the Pensions Committee at every meeting. And the purpose really is to update the committee on a number of ongoing issues to make sure that you're informed and kept up to date on those. In particular, when we're looking at McLeod and the pensions dashboard and the reform that's coming through from Fit for the Future, the consultation. But it's also to inform the committee of any new developments since the last meeting. So any new consultations or changes to the regulations that may impact on our governance, investment or administration arrangements. So first of all, at paragraph 2, there's just a quick update there about the pension schemes bill. So the pension schemes bill is going through government at the moment. The bill will enable the proposed reforms from the Fit for the Future consultation, will enable those reforms to be implemented, which includes management of the LGPS, the investment management of the LGPS, and other extended governance arrangements, which we've discussed at previous meetings. It has been reviewed and amended, and there's still work going through on that. And just a reminder really that we are expecting final regulations in 2026 ahead of the 1st of April implementation date. We don't know how soon ahead of, but certainly before that date. So we'll continue to bring updates on that and consider any implications that may have. At paragraph 3, there's some information about some new consultations and responses that we've received during this last period. The main one that I want to talk about to the committee this morning is a consultation that we've received that's entitled Scheme Improvements, Access and Protections. So that consultation comes off the back of the Access and Fairness consultation, which is going to have an implication on administration and benefit structure. This consultation is looking at 4 key areas. The consultation is open until the 22nd of December. So the 4 key areas, one of those normal minimum pension age. This is around the government's increasing of the normal minimum pension age from 55 to 57 from the 6th of April 2028. And the consultation sets out the proposal for protected pension age that will be offered to some of our scheme members. So whilst we welcome that protection, it obviously will add another layer of complexity to administering the scheme. It means, again, we've got a 2-tier system when we're looking at retirement dates for individuals and applying reductions to those benefits for early retirement. There's some proposals regarding academies and employer consolidation rules. These are largely driven by multi-academy trusts. So we have a number of multi-academy trusts in our pension fund, but that's the same across the whole of England and Wales. And a number of those multi-academy trusts will be in more than one pension fund in England and Wales. So the government is proposing to bring about a solution which will enable multi-academy trusts to consolidate all of their schools into one LGPS fund with a number of requirements attached to that. There's also a proposal around the admission of admission bodies into the scheme. This is a proposal that's been on the cards on and off for several years now to try and improve contractors joining the scheme and improve that process. It's called New Fair Deal, and they're seeking to implement that New Fair Deal proposal now into the regulations from next year, which would it would bring about a number of time savings really for the officers of the fund and help us manage the risk of those new admission bodies in the proposals. And the final area that's set out in this consultation is a proposal which will enable councillors and mayors to have access to the LGPS. So this is reintroducing the local government pension scheme to councillors and mayors in England. So the proposal is that all English mayors and deputy mayors, as well as councillors, would have access to the LGPS, and that would enable them to participate as members in the 2014 LGPS scheme. They'll be treated the same as other members of the scheme. So I think that proposal will require changed regulation, but we're expecting that to be implemented from the 1st of April 2026. So that was on that particular area. There is at paragraph 4, there's just a quick update around the McLeod remedy. As you know, we've got the McLeod remedy implementation is still underway throughout the fund. That's looking at cases now for members that are retiring and calculation of benefits, but also we will have an exercise to look at the retrospective cases for those that we need to go back and have a look over. We've explained at earlier committee meetings, one of our biggest challenges has been the software and the software's ability to perform those calculations. Where it can't do those calculations, it requires manual input from our officers, which has obviously contributed to some of our workforce challenges at the moment, some of our workload challenges. We're still liaising with Civica and working very closely with them. Civica is our software provider. We are expecting the latest system update. It's scheduled for November 2025. The majority of functionality needed for processing retrospective cases is included in this release, while procedures for calculating transfers and reviewing retrospective survivor benefits will follow. So this doesn't bring the full solution to us, but it's starting to bring a little bit more to us. What I would say about that is we obviously are working on looking at a proposal to project manage, looking at these McLeod cases. We, as you'll know, we've now got that section restructure approved, which included a dedicated project team to look at that work. Realistically, we're not going to be able to set up that project team in any fullness until we've successfully recruited to those additional posts. So we'll keep you updated on progress, and a further update will be provided at the January meeting, but we're not expecting any significant progress in these first few months. So we will keep you updated on that. In respect of the dashboard, you may recall at the last meeting we brought an update about our ISP provider, our integrated service provider, which is Civica. That will enable us to go live on the dashboard platform. There had been some issues with the penetration testing, and it had not been accepted by the pensions dashboard programme didn't align with the original scope and there were some issues there. So that matter is still with Civica. It's been addressed as a priority. We are we're receiving updates on that, and we understand that there is now a revised timeline for us to connect, which will be in November 2025. That deadline was extended until January 2026. So at the moment, we are expecting to be able to meet within that timeline. So there are some other items in the report. They are just very quick updates, and not intending to go through those, and I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Healy.
Just asking you what are the implications on the council's finances if councillors are readmitted to the LGPS from the 1st of April? Presumably, does that mean sort of employer contributions? And do we know what impact that would have, and has it been factored into our sort of budgeting? I know we're working on the budget at the moment, but what will be the impact of that in the scheme of things? Probably not a lot, I'm guessing, but maybe you could comment on that, Julian.
Yeah, it will have an impact on next year's budget. It will be of benefit. It's not factored in at the moment, and we're waiting for the final results of the evaluation at the moment. But it's very possible that it will be significant in terms of the impact on the base budget. So hopefully some good news coming there.
Yeah, it is very interesting actually that councillors are being allowed to rejoin the scheme, having been excluded from a while ago. It's quite an interesting thing that probably in the terms of in the UK workforce, I think councillors are probably the only people who are currently not able to join a workplace pension. You know, so virtually anybody else at work, you know, it's against the law to not be able to be joining a pension. We're wise and wordfuls about this scheme, but there we are. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've got 3 questions. What can I say? I've been well behaved of late. So firstly, I would just say that there's 128 politicians, 67 councillors at East Riding, 60 at Hull, and a mayor. And when you look at the wider, 130,000 membership of the LGPS scheme in this part of the world, and the million or odd across border to coast, 128 does feel like something of a drop in the open. But I do agree with a drop in the ocean. But I do agree with Councillor Healy that we should be asking about the impact. We should be prepared, and we should realise that there is going to be some level of unforeseen and therefore unbudgeted obligations. However, having said that, Councillor Hopton's exactly right. I mean, councillors don't get a wage, councillors don't get a salary, so councillors getting a pension would be nice, especially if we want to attract people with half a brain into doing this role. It feels somewhat contradictory that we want sensible people to make informed decisions on behalf of 340,000 people across the East Riding, but we're not actually willing to recognise that they're actually working for the area. So just first off, I'd say that support, endorse, whatever it may be, the principle of councillors getting a pension. And I don't know if we can feed that back into the consultation, but it's something I'd like to see recognised. And Liz did say, sorry?
Yeah, Liz is nodding at that fact. Can I just on a point of accuracy there, Richard, obviously the only liability to East Riding, the Yorkshire Council, is the 67 councillors within here. The liability for all the other councillors, obviously you've said Hull City Council, we've got Councillor Harness online, who's North East Links. I think I've got that right with North East Links, yeah. And obviously that, you know, etc. in there. So each council is responsible for its costs of its own members. So
thank you, Chair. And yeah, I didn't want to go through every council that pays into the East Riding pension fund, nor the pool, because we'd be here all day. And as much as I do love the sound of my own voice, I'm not quite that narcissistic or cruel. So the next thing I wanted to mention is that it's also worth noting that my current pension plan is alcohol and cigarettes, and it's not exactly robust. So it's quite, again, something that I think we should be encouraging. And without a salary or a wage, again, a pension seems sensible. So whatever we can do at this committee to make a recommendation to support feeding into that consultation is something I think we should do. The second point I wanted to make is entirely separate from this, and it's at 7.1 of the report on page 23. It talks about a crisis in the escalating retirements. Now, I am averse to hearing the word or seeing the word crisis in any reports. The definition of a crisis is immediate. It has an impact. This is something that's been building for a long time and will persist for a long time to come. It does not meet the dictionary definition of the word crisis. It's not sensationalist. There is a problem, but I disagree with the principle this is a crisis. This is a problem that needs to be solved. And again, Chair, I just wanted to make that clear at this juncture. And then the last thing I wanted to ask was about the SAB on 6.2 at the bottom of page 22. And it says that the advice offers practical guidance for administering authorities on how to align with the proposals of pooling whilst effectively managing conflicts of interest. And it would not be a meeting of this committee if we did not talk about the definition of conflicts of interest and things like ideological investment, things like divestments, and ultimately what is the remit or scope of the phrasing conflicts of interest and what will be encapsulated under that umbrella and what won't be is my question.
Would anybody like to answer that? Tom?
Yeah, I think this is something that I suppose we and Board of the Coast are very aware of in terms of how developments are going to progress. And you know, we're moving, you know, as we'll come on to, we're moving from a situation where we've got, you know, 10 other partners, and that's going to increase, and what those arrangements are going to look like. And the pool organisation is going to take on a somewhat different role from where it is. So these are things we're fully aware of. I mean, they have been kind of highlighted through the Scheme Advisory Board, but you know, we've seen these coming from a few years away in terms of the direction it was travelling in. So just to assure the committee that this is just going to be part of the consideration of the developments for what the new governance arrangements are going to look like.
Can I just add? I think one of the areas of conflict of interest is that the Board of the Coast or the pools will have a greater role in providing advice to this, you know, to East Riding or whichever fund it is. You know, is there a feeling that they could advise us to invest in funds that they think are suitable for their own benefit? I suppose that's one of the biggest areas of conflicts of interest. You know, if they've got a fund and they want some more money in it, are they going to advise us to go into it? So that's why we need to keep our own independent advice as well, as we do have, and all the other ones do as well, because otherwise, you know, if there's only one source of advice, are we going to be forced down that route?
Not necessarily what's good for the goose being good for the gander.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, just add to that, Chair. So that's absolutely right. I think, you know, holding the pool company to account in terms of their overall performance, you know, because we view all the developments pretty positively, but of course, what really matters for us at the end is that Board of the Coast is able to deliver on investment performance. In the old world, we wouldn't have gone to an investment manager and asked them to provide us with advice, because, you know, that's the risk that they would encourage us to invest in their funds. So this is one of the challenges that we are in the process of addressing with Board of the Coast on how this is going to work going forward.
I think that's like been the nature of financial advice through the ages, really, trying to keep that separation of the people giving the advice from the people who are actually managing the money separate. I know, having worked in financial services sort of my working career, that sometimes those lines were blurred. So it's good that, you know, when we're looking at this and such a huge amount of you know, effectively taxpayer and beneficiaries' money, that is there, and you know, without doubt, you know, for the many Board of the Coast meetings I've attended now the last couple of years or so, that you know, there's a lot of emphasis on the performance of the funds and how those are performing in comparison to their peers and everything else. So yeah, that's very, very relevant. Anything from anybody else? No? Okay, it's recommended the committee notes this report, which I think is fine.
Chairman, there's also the comment from Councillor Meredith about whether the committee wished to endorse the element relating to making the scheme eligible for councillors and mayors, and whether the committee supported it.
And also, just because I'm a nuisance, and apologies in advance, Liz, any ability to either see it backdated. For example, I was elected on the 7th of May 2015, and councillors stopped being able to access the pension fund on the 6th of May 2015. Or similarly, a top-up, because a percentage of a pittance is still a pittance. And as much as it would be nice to have a pension of £5 a month in 40 years' time, it might be nice if I was to forward plan for once and actually engage in preparing for my dotage. But ultimately, just to see a percentage of it put aside and for us to just go, yeah, right, whatever, move on, doesn't seem prudent or planned. And so ultimately actually engaging with councillors who, I mean, I think the only councillors in this room who've had the ability to pay into a pension at this authority is Councillor Holtby and Councillor Whittle. None of the rest of us have had that luxury. So it might even be that there might be a member development session on it needed as well.
Yeah, potentially. I think that does open a whole can of work. So, Councillor Meredith, because there's lots of councillors come and gone in that period of time, and we've already had the question about the cost of the authority and everything else. So, yeah, I think that would be. I'd look to be proceeding with caution on that one, to be fair. But Councillor Healy.
I think it's a point well made that there's been a gap of 12 years. So, you know, in that period of time, government had decided that councillors wouldn't be eligible, and now the government's decided that it is. And I think it's worth making the point that there is a void for 12 years. Granted, some are not there anymore, but one could probably argue then those that still are potentially could have some redress from that. So I think it's a point well made. I mean, I do understand it would be very complex if you were administering it for those who've left the council in that interim period, but I think it's definitely a point that is worth noting.
It strikes me as a bit odd that anybody who was a councillor before 2015 or after 2026 is, through the ability to access a pension fund, recognised as having worked on behalf of their community, whereas anybody in that 11-year gap in the middle is not. And it just strikes me as peculiar that at the moment we don't work, we do something else. I'm not sure what the adjective for that would be, but it just strikes me as odd. And I thought, again, as Councillor Healy just said, it's a point in need of making.
Yeah, Lisa. Again, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you. Just to add to the point on the conflicts of interest, that legal opinion is published on the SAB's website. So I'm happy to share that link if anybody would like to read that. I can share that to the whole committee. And on the 7.1 section, crisis was the word the central government have used in the terms of reference for committee. So that's the reason for that word in the report.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think you just in temperance to what you said there, Councillor Meredith, about crisis. It depends how far you want to delve into that, because one could say, for a variety of different ways with an aging population and potentially moving forward a shrinking workforce in comparison to those that are retired, one could view it as a crisis, because how is that going to be funded throughout there if people haven't funded for their own retirement? It is potentially a crisis on that basis. So I'm not one to normally sensationalise things on there, but I can understand why that may have been worded. Anyway,
just to say thank you, Chair. Yes, a catastrophe, maybe. Crisis, again, by definition, it's a short-term thing, and far be it from any of us or indeed government to sensationalise. It's just whenever I see the word crisis in any report at any committee, my instant reaction is to take umbrage with it, because unless it is an immediate, short-lived, short-term, unforeseen situation, it doesn't actually meet the definition as described in the lexicon we are all using to communicate. So it was just really one of those that I didn't think we could allow government to sensationalise without at least mentioning the fact that they are indeed sensationalising.
Right. So do we need, from what you're saying to us here, John, we need to document something?
It was just to clarify the committee's support for the proposal.
Do you want to just clarify? Are you okay with what was being proposed?
It's for the committee to determine whether they're happy with what's proposed, not
yeah. But yeah.
In terms of clarification then, Chair, just merely to point out, there is a consultation about councillors having access to the LGPS, and that's something that I recommended that this committee endorse, and that it does actually show a recognition of the work we do on behalf of communities in the same anybody else in any form of employment would undertake. And that in turn would allow this authority to feed into said consultation with that philosophy. So I'll go as far as formally proposing that, and if I could have a second, councillor. So.
You're seconding that, yeah. But what you're also saying though is talking about the interim period as well, aren't you? That is of course looked at. Is that what you're meaning?
It would be nice if representations on those points could be made. I won't hold my breath or cross any fingers, but it would be nice if that could be at least mentioned.
Well, we've got Steve here as our newer representation for the union, so maybe we should all join the union and get Steve to take it up on behalf, perhaps. I'm not sure, can councillors join the union? I'm not sure. I was always a union member throughout my working career, but I'm not sure if we can, but there you go.
Well, if he's half as well informed and half as nice as Robin, I'd be more than happy to back him.
Right, fabulous. Right, so it been proposed by Councillor Meredith, seconded by Councillor Healy. We all in favour, or those in favour? Okay, with that, moving on to the next section, corporate governance and voting activity. We've got an update here from Tom. I've noticed one of the companies we're talking about is Home Depot, and having recently visited a Home Depot for the first time on my trip to the States, I can highly recommend their Halloween section. It was something to behold.
Thanks, Chair. So, yeah, this is the latest quarterly report on engagement and voting activity. As is usual, it's lagged by a quarter because of the time it takes to collect all of the data. So this talks about the June quarter, which was a extremely busy quarter in terms of voting in particular. Border to Coast cast nearly 6,000 votes in the quarter. There are the usual links in the report to the Border to Coast voting and engagement activity, and a few excerpts, including, as you said, Chair, the Home Depot example within the report. Just to mention, I did circulate an update to the committee a couple of days ago on engagement with water companies. One bit of additional information is just to say that, in relation to Yorkshire Water, over the last few years, Border to Coast has met with the company on 5 separate occasions. So this is to talk about a variety of issues such as response times in relation to floods and pollution events, water resilience, and also some nature-based solutions related to flood management. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So hopefully the committee will get some kind of reassurance that issues that we all consider important are being addressed. I think we also fed back some information to Border to Coast in terms of the engagement themes going forward. So Border to Coast have been collecting information from all 11 partner funds on how to prioritise the range of investment areas over the next 3 years. And there's a 3-year plan for these areas to make sure that these engagement areas are given the attention they deserve, because engagement with companies tends to work more effectively if there's a process over an extended period where initial meetings will set up with companies are what we see as KPIs for those companies, and we can measure their progress. So we will soon see Border to Coast conclusion from all of that in terms of how they're going to prioritise engagements over the next 3 years. That's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. I just, as a member of the Environment and Regeneration Committee at the Council with Yorkshire Water, were here with us recently, and it's great to see that Border to Coast are basically sort of continuing some of those conversations that we've had with some of the concerns over how our water is managed in this region in particular. Obviously, there's issues throughout the country, but we've all got particular interest around here. So, yeah, has anyone got any questions for Tom on that there. So
Just asking you on the sort of ConocoPhillips is mentioned here as an example, where Border to Coast voted against. Can you just explain that voting outcome? It said 3% of shareholders voted against the board chair's re-election, 1% supported the shareholder proposal. So does that mean effectively Border Coast lost the argument there? Effectively, that's what we're saying. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would support obviously the decision that they took to vote against. I mean, clearly, I don't know if there's any way that we can express, our support of the decision that they took, and note with, concern that ConocoPhillips effectively don't seem to be taking their climate responsibilities very seriously, and we support the decision that they took, and regret that that wasn't shared by the rest of the shareholders. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree absolutely with that, Councillor Healy. I think it's just a very interesting dynamic that there is at the moment, particularly in the US, about the approach that companies in general are taking to responsible investment, given the current US administration, energy companies in particular. But Border to Coast are sticking to their guns in terms of how they are engaging with these companies and doing what they can. But these percentage numbers are much smaller than we typically are used to seeing. So even if we haven't been successful in terms of our position being supported by the majority, in the past we've tended to see a much more significant percentage in opposition. And once those percentages get to the sort of 10, 15, 20% level, even though emotion is lost, the company really has to start taking notice of what some of its shareholders are saying. But it's just a very difficult environment in the US, but we're doing what we can.
One thing is that Border to Coast has, I mean, I'm sure you'll remember the way that they manage money is just to invest in the best companies in that sector. So they're never going to disinvest necessarily. And it may just be that Conoco is the least worst. That's just the way they operate. And it's worth remembering that's where they're coming from. It's not necessarily that they like what they're investing in. It's just the least bad.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest that they disinvest from ConocoPhillips, but I just think a note of endorsement that we approve of the stance that they're taking on climate risk as a general principle, and they've set out their their ethical investment strategy very clearly, and we're supportive of it. And this is just, I think, an example of where we could potentially say, we think you're doing the right thing. And we, clearly you're fighting against the tide here, because especially in the US, as you say, where nearly all the shareholders disagree with the stance that Border to Coast took.
yeah, I think that's the general philosophy behind engagement, I suppose, isn't it? Is that you still have a seat at the table, you have that conversation that can have an influence, no matter how big or small. So, right, okay. Thank you, Tom, and everybody else for the conversation around that.
Sorry, could I just ask one thing? I mean, one thing that you might ask Border to Coast to indulge in, and maybe other pools as well, is to increase their social media presence, because that is a powerful tool. I mean, I'm not sure that they really do anything at the moment, but obviously to highlight these kind of issues, the social media sort of stance might help sway opinion in their direction.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. Just along with Rowan's line of reasoning there, I do see quite a lot from Rachel Elwell on LinkedIn. I do see her promoting the events she undertakes, the activities, and actually she's quite good at putting in something I'm incapable of, a précis, some sort of short, sharp comments explaining what she's doing and why it's important. And I do admit I find that useful. Now, I'm not sure if Border to Coast needs a brand. I'm not sure if it has to market itself. It's not really selling anything, but in terms of information sharing, in terms of transparency, especially in what is the public sector, it is public money that it is investing, I hesitate to use the words playing with, it would be good to see some sort of tangibility and transparency. I'm not sure if getting a Twitter account or something's the way to go, but some sort of public profile wouldn't go amiss, I don't think.
I think that's very valid, and yeah, I agree. I also see what Rachel, but also Border to Coast do post some stuff on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure they've got a social media presence elsewhere. Again, you wonder that there's pros and cons on that, aren't there? To be honest, it depends on what you want to get from that and where you want that to be. So I think that's certainly a conversation that I can take away and talk about at the next joint committee meeting, and along with Tom and the other now much bigger Border to Coast, it seems. So yeah.
Just then, in terms of remit, shall we say, you mentioned it at the beginning of this agenda item, Chair, that in this very room a month ago we had Yorkshire Water in, and I'm pretty sure they went home rather miffed with us. We were not kind in our scrutiny of the organisation, and that actually, as I say, this room is where that discussion was held, but it was not this committee that did it. And so I would suggest that if there was to be some sort of social media presence, a remit for it as well. It shouldn't become an echo chamber. It shouldn't become a championing pitchfork environment. There shouldn't be any burning torches or daggers at dawn. It should be for the interest of pointing out prudence with public finances. It should be for talking about engagement. It should be for the exact type of thing Councillor Healy mentioned. This vote was taken. This is why. This was the outcome. This is what it means. That sort of thing, I think, would be sensible. But turning it into the foundations of a crusade is something I'd be cautious about from the outset.
Well, I think that probably until I became involved with as a councillor in this committee, I had no idea about Border to Coast. Didn't even know it existed. So how many of the 110,000 members are aware of Border to Coast? I know my wife's aware of Border to Coast, but that's probably just she sees me disappearing off to Leeds every quarter to go to a meeting. So any detail on that, yeah, I'm sure there'd be, would be maybe, highlighting that would draw more people towards the website and information. So yeah, let me take that one away as part of what we're talking about today. But I don't think we need to formalise that as such. But just yeah. Okay. We all good with that? Yep. Marvellous. Thank you, everybody. On to point 8. Any other items which the chairman decides are urgent by reason of special circumstances which must be specified? I don't have any of those. So on to point 9. The committee is asked to consider excluding the press and public from the meeting for consideration of the following items on the grounds that they are likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. In making its decision, the committee is asked to confirm that, having regard to all circumstances, it is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are we all okay with that? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So therefore, that's the public part of the meeting closed.